Hello and welcome to episode 304 of Hot Media with Bob Mann. And I really want to thank Rebecca Aguilar last week, the new president of the Society of Professional Journalists, giving us some great insight about her new term as president and also spreading the word about Hot Media with a lot of people in SPJ. If you're one of the people who is a member of the Society of Professional Journalists, you should know that Hot Media does cover primarily journalism issues, but we love to get involved as well with entertainment. And that's what we're going to be doing because we're talking about on this show the hottest content and the hottest controversies in mass media. And it's not so much a controversy as much as it is a content issue. And that is that NBC has no situation comedies in its primetime lineup for the first time since 1948. And Fox, the Fox Broadcast Network, does not have any comedy at all except for its animation. What is happening to comedy in broadcast TV? And the perfect person to bring in here is my friend Len Klatt. And Len is a broadcast executive, and he is also, in addition to that, a writer and producer. You've heard him on the podcast. You haven't seen him on the video version on YouTube yet, but he has done a completely digital situation comedy, which is now, after a couple of months out there, getting a lot of attention. So, Len, thank you very much for being willing to come back here on Hot Media. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Bob.
Let's talk about this whole idea. Are you surprised that a network like NBC does not have a single sitcom in the rotation?
I didn't realize that, Bob. And going back to, what we're doing, our web series, we've been getting a lot of comments from viewers. And one of the comments was, NBC has no sitcoms on. Why not your show? And that was the first inkling I got that they had nothing going on with regard to comedy. And it's shocking.
What is strange, though, is the explanation, because there was a story about this in Entertainment Weekly just a couple of weeks ago. And they interviewed some of the programming executives, and they said there's no sense in bringing on one comedy if you don't already have another to pair it with. The idea that they're doing this concept of block programming, you strip 4 sitcoms across or 3 medical programs to keep audience flow. It almost seems as if that's more of an outdated idea than the situation comedy itself. The idea that people just watch television and don't want to get up to change the channel. I mean, it's a very 1960s concept that they're giving as one of the explanations.
Well, they're shooting themselves in the foot by, providing a variety of different portals to which that they can watch their favorite show every week, whether it be comedy or drama. If you miss the primetime viewing, maybe you taped it because it's in your DVR queue, or you just go to the network website, or you follow it on Hulu. And there's just so many different ways that they're reaching out for the audience that you really can't say there's any one way that people are absorbing content. So the days of waiting for the next episode of Friends to see what's going on with Ross and Rachel, and you have to wait a week for that, those days are over, sadly.
I am actually happy, though, that Apple TV is sticking to this with Ted Lasso. I love Ted Lasso. I don't want it to go away because of the fact that I binged it. I don't have that opportunity. We're recording this on a Friday, October 1st. There is a new one that is dropping today, but they don't drop the whole series at once, which is usual for streaming services. The thing is, though, Len, is it content and is it the subject matter that may also scare off the broadcast networks? Because comedy is definitely edgier. If you look at something, even though it's 20 years old, 21 years old, like Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David is doing kind of a version of Seinfeld, but it is with subject matter and language that you would have never gotten away with on NBC. When you look at Ted Lasso, it's dealing with a lot of issues that are beyond comedy. You look at a show like Hacks, and, I just can't see it with its caustic dialogue getting past the affiliates, the advertisers, and the department known as standards and practices at the major networks. Could that be part of this picture?
Most definitely. I think when you use the word edgier, I kind of connote that to being also the word darker. It takes a while, I've noticed, with some of the comedies coming on the last couple of years, that it takes a while to warm up to the characters, that they are painted so dark, and in some cases come off initially very unlikable, that if you don't trap the viewer in the first or second episode, you've got the danger of not getting them at all. Hacks is a great example of that. And the first episode of Hacks was, I thought, was like, I don't like these people. I find them very narcissistic, and I'm going to spend a half hour with them for the next 10 weeks. And the only reason I stuck with it is because of Jean Smart, who I've seen in a variety of different shows, going back to Designing Women, and I think she's great. And I was rewarded from my patience because, and it was probably the POV of the writers to do it this way, is that these people, the two main characters in that show, kind of grew on you. And that was by design because they were indeed growing on each other. But there are some shows that I have sampled in the first two episodes, and I said, I'm not back. And usually I would give things a try.
I have found this to be true with streaming shows, that I will give something 2 or 3 chances. If I don't like it and everybody's raving about it, I will give it a second and third chance, and sometimes I'm so glad I did. I think with the business model of broadcast television, instant gratification, ratings, shares, points, all of that, that's still not even a possibility. But there are, just because NBC and Fox don't have a traditional sitcom, there are other networks still doing it. ABC still has them. CBS just premiered something called Ghosts. But in almost all of these cases now, and this sounds a little bit like my TV show genres class at Caldwell University, where you actually were, through a Google Meet, a lecturer at one point last semester. When you take a look at the single camera sitcom, it does change a production model that people may not even notice, but they have to notice on some level. Back in the 1950s, Desi Arnaz created the idea of the multi-camera shoot with a live audience, 4 different sets. You got the spontaneity, but you also got the film quality. And yes, it was film in those days. But now it's a single camera with no audience, done as if it is a documentary. How much do you feel that, whether it's broadcast, cable, or streaming, that single camera production style has changed what is the situation comedy on television?
It has, because you go back to the day and you're talking about NBC not having any comedies, where back in the 80s, Thursday night was the way to go, and they were probably all 4 of the shows that they had on that night were all multicam shows. Of course, you start with Cosby. And, somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s, single camera became a way to go for a lot of producers and directors. And they became enamored with the format. The problem with it, and I don't have the numbers in my hand to back it up, but I can tell you it's true, is that when you get to reruns and syndication and long lifespans for shows that are still doing very, very well on streaming services, Golden Girls, Cheers, Frasier, Everybody Loves Raymond, they're all multicam shows. The multicam shows rerun and have a longer shelf life, largely because you can hear the laughter. You could be in another room, or you could be multitasking. You can hear the laughter from another room, and you just go in, and you know the episode, and you know this is where Peter Boyle is going to say X to Doris Roberts, and you're going to wait for that laugh. And those are the shows that last. If I don't know if people are second visiting or third visiting or fourth visiting episodes of Modern Family or Blackish or The Middle, all fine shows, but are people sampling them more than once? Do they have the rerun power? Are they shows like I Love Lucy, which is on its fifth generation, and the new I Love Lucy with regard to spanning generations is Friends. Friends.
Yeah, that reunion
I know.
certainly brought people from many different generations. It is interesting how it does cross. So many other things in culture now just don't cross generations, but some of these shows do.
They just last longer. And, TV Land about 10, 15 years ago, they decided to supplement their, running reruns of past shows. And they tried to get into production themselves, and they did so with a very, very familiar format, the traditional multicam. And they did it with Hot in Cleveland, pulling in people like Valerie Bertinelli, Jane Leaves, Wendy Malick, Betty White, and are very recognizable, very likable actors. And they did very, very well on the air. And we thought that was going to be, there was another outlet for traditional multicam, and they dropped it. But indeed, that show alone has provided millions, billions of dollars for Nickelodeon and TV Land, because the international viewing and sales of that show is still skyrocketing. Amazing.
I named the episode Canned Laughter, a little double meaning there, because canned laughter meant the laugh track. And it was in a can, like when something's recorded or filmed. But the little play on words is that NBC kind of canned laughter, but they still do have Saturday Night Live. They still do have their late night shows with Jimmy Fallon and with Seth Meyers. So NBC is not devoid of comedy. Does television comedy need the sitcom to remain in the comedy business? Does it need that particular genre to continue to be the definition or the primary definition of comedy in the medium of television?
I think so, and I hope so. Because there is no better there's no better way of delivering a comedic story, right, going from scene A to scene B. As I said, I am a big fan of the multicam with the taped in front of a live studio audience, because you can hear the energy, you can see the energy coming more out of the actors. I'm always going to be somebody that's going to always gravitate to that particular format. But I really hope that the focus of comedy, and if you look at shows throughout history, going back to the 50s, is the family. It's a family of people. It's a family of friends. It's a family of people in a workplace.
Co-workers.
Co-workers,
It doesn't have to be a
exactly.
biological family to be a
And
nuclear family.
and from my viewpoint, some of the settings and log lines and plot lines of the sitcoms today are a bit too complicated and get away from that family notion, which is, I think, was what draws viewers to the format.
Let's just wrap it up by talking about your work. I introduce you as a broadcasting executive, but also a writer and producer. But during the height of the pandemic, and of course, we don't know where we are in the pandemic right now, in, out, back again. But the idea of something that is remote, we're not locked down in our houses anymore, but a lot of us are still working at least quasi remotely, tell the audience quickly, because we've given this 2 episodes about your fully digital sitcom, but it's now out there long enough that it's getting a good deal of traction and reaction. Talk a little bit about From Here to There.
Yeah, our show was something that we designed several years ago, and we were trying to promote it in staged readings and going out of the box thinking, as opposed to approaching the usual development types. And when the pandemic hit, we hit upon the notion of, let's try this on Zoom. And there was some false starts, but we ultimately created a virtual package, showcase package, online on its own website, gets views from YouTube, Vimeo, and the website itself, of 2 episodes. And we also supplemented it with about 6 or 7 different interviews with some of the cast, some of the behind the scenes people. And we're happy to say that just promoting this on our own, we've had over 10,000 views of the video. And it goes all across the world, going back to the comment I made earlier about Hot in Cleveland. We've had 5 views from the Republic of Korea. I don't know how that happens, but it did. I become very enamored of the metrics, and I look at the analytics all the time to see where it's going. So we've gotten a fan base amongst ourselves. Now it's just our goal is to try to get this produced in a way we want to produce it, not on Zoom, and produced in the traditional way, and not necessarily designed for a network. I fully believe that there is going to be in our future, people will do shows, they will put them up on portals, on their own websites, whatever, and that they will be sponsored. And that is the way things are going back to the days of the 50s, where you had single sponsors for every TV show that was on prime time.
It's the Carnation Hour and all of the rest. They actually
Exactly.
own the show. I think I actually added one extra word to the title. Give the audience the title and where they can find it online.
It is the sitcom is called Here to There. You can find it online at heretotheretv.com. That's the website that brings you in. You'll see the bios of the cast. You'll see some great photos of the Seattle ferry. And you'll find our episodes and all the video content that we've produced. To qualify for a couple of web series awards, we have come to the conclusion that we might need to do a 3rd episode. And so we are, I don't think anybody's got a real appetite for going back on Zoom, because Zoom seems so 2020 and it's 2021. But that's going to be the way it's going to go. Zoom is the world's cheapest soundstage. And we've figured out how to really do it with some graphics and some visuals and sound effects. Almost kind of tying it into the old radio comedy format. And so we might be doing that in short order. We've got 13 scripts done, so we could easily do the 3rd episode.
Len, thank you very much, because I love your knowledge of the sitcom genre and your work in it. And just one final thing, TV is a cyclical business. This conversation that we're having about the death of the sitcom has been had before, hasn't it?
It was happening. You had and CBS really ran the sitcoms in the 60s and 70s, and then you had Norman Lear and the MTM crowd, and they just ruled the roost. And then Gary Marshall got in there with a couple of his shows in the late 70s, and in the early 80s things died out. And going back to and it was NBC that kind of revitalized the sitcom when, number one, they produced Cheers, but Cheers didn't get an audience the first year or 2 that it was on the air. Cheers really didn't get the sampling until it was packaged with a show called The Cosby Show, which and now we all know that The Cosby Show, for all its success, you'll probably never see it again.
Well, Len, I again thank you very much. I would ask you to just hold on the line here just while I do the sign off here, because for the audio version of the podcast, there's tons of editing available. This is pretty much live to tape. But I want to thank you very much for your insight, and good luck, with Here to There as things move on.
Always happy to discuss the temperature of media with you.
All right, Len Klatt, thank you so very much. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, I know this is probably new to you. Just go to the Bob Mann channel. We would love to have more subscribers to be able to get our own unique URL, but for now almost 2 years, we've been in the audio version, which is on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Odyssey, and a lot of other areas. To find out more about the podcast, please follow me on Twitter. My handle @BobMannMedia, BOBMANN Media. And on Instagram, it's BobMan92. But to get everything about the podcast, just go to the website, www.bobmanhotmedia.com. And I thank you very much for being right here with us on Hot Media. And I hope you join us on a regular basis here as we talk about the hottest content and the hottest controversies in mass media. Yes, we do entertainment and a lot about journalism, what's in the news, and how the media handles it, all on Hot Media.